What's up guys, welcome to part 2. In this video I'll be completing the flight script, so I'll be adding animations, I'll be adding sound effects, a boost system. So when you press R, it boosts the speed of your fly, and I'll be fixing some movement bugs, stuff like that. So yeah, let's get straight to it. First of all, go into your local script, and we're gonna start off by adding some new services. The first one is gonna be replicated storage. Local game get service replicated storage. We're referencing it because this is the place where we're gonna store the VFX of the boost, because I want this VFX to appear behind my character when I activate the boost system. Then we're gonna reference the tween service and the debris service. So tween service is what will animate the boost effect, and we're gonna use the debris service to delete the temporary effects so they do not stay in the game forever. In part 1 we only had one speed, which was the flying speed. Since we want a boost system, we will need a second speed, which we will call boost speed, and it's gonna be around 100. We can even like up it a bit, so we can do like 200, and it's gonna be the same logic as the flying system. We're gonna add a boolean, so local boost equal false. It's gonna tell the script if the player is currently boosting or not. What I'm gonna add is the humanoid, because now we will need to control the animations, auto rotate, and the humanoid state. You'll understand in a bit what I mean by auto rotate and the state of the humanoid. As you saw in the beginning, we have an idle animation for the fly, and we have an actual fly animation, so when we are moving. There's two parts to the animation. So the animation object stores the animation IDs, which is going to be these two, and we have the animation track. So that's going to be the track for the idle, that's going to be the track for the moving. What the animation track variables will store is the loaded animations after they are loaded into the animator. So that's why we're going to need both. Here we will create the idle flying animation and the moving flying animation. Fly idle anim equal instance.new animation, and it's going to be the same for the moving animation. We're just going to add names, and now we will need the actual animation ID. So that means we will have to animate both of these animations and then get the ID to paste it here. Just a little context, the fly idle animation will only play when the character is moving up or down in the y-axis, or it's not moving at all. The moving animation plays when the player is actually moving horizontally, so forward, backward, left, or right. So now I'll create both animations. So in my case, I'm using animation editor. I already did the idle animation off camera. As you can see, that's how it looks like. Just make sure it's looped, and once you're done, click the three buttons here. Make sure to set the animation priority to action, and then you publish to Roblox. Save and copy the ID, then put it directly inside of the script, and you do the same process for the movement animation. As you can see, I already did the movement animation off camera as well. It's the same exportation process. You click on the three buttons here, set animation priority to action, publish to Roblox, then you save, copy the ID, and you paste it inside of the script directly. Then once you're done doing all that, we're going to continue by managing the variables of the boost. So like the effects of the boost, we're going to create a variable for the particles of the boost and the actual model. So this one is going to be for the air effect, so this model here, and the boost particles is going to be for the particle trail that stays on the player during the boost. We store these particles like that in a variable because later we're going to need to destroy them. One small little thing I'll add is going to be just 4 arrow keys, as I mentioned in part 1, and I'll just change left control to Ctrl just to make the name shorter. So here I added the 4 arrow keys, so you can not only control the fly system with WASD but also with the 4 arrow keys. But the purpose is the same. It's gonna track which movement keys are being held, but just for more keys. Now we're gonna add a function we're gonna call explode, and we're gonna add part and VFX. This function is gonna handle the boost effect. First we're gonna parent the VFX to the humanoid root part, because part is gonna be humanoid root part, and the VFX is gonna be this. This is a free model, by the way. If you want it, it's gonna be in the description. When it appears, we want it to appear where the humanoid stands, because as we fly, we're gonna go fast, like we're gonna move like that, and as soon as we press R, we want this to appear behind the character, and it's gonna appear like where the character was during that instant T. So as soon as the player presses R on their keyboard, and we want it to stay in place and slowly disappearing. So as we move forward, let's say here we press R, then this is gonna appear, and then the player is gonna move forward, and this is gonna slowly increase in size and disappear. So the transparency is going to slowly increase, so it leaves the impression that it's disappearing. So the C-frame is the position and orientation of the VFX, and we want it to be exactly where the humanoid root part is. And when this happens, we want it to make it slowly disappear. So that's where the tween service is going to come handy. We're going to create tween info. It's going to last 1 second. Then on the easing style linear, easing direction out. So that's like the way it's gonna quote unquote disappear. And what we want to affect is the transparency. So local goal is gonna be transparency equal 1. And we also want to affect the size, so we want it to grow bigger and bigger as it disappears. So here, as you can see, it's giving me values. So just increase the size of the model, just like that, and then copy the size and paste it into the script. Vector 3.new, and then we're gonna create the actual tween. And after that, of course, we want to make it play, and then we want to make it disappear, let's say 1.5 seconds after. That's even better, like let's do like 2 seconds. Just like that. Next step is going to be to create a function that creates particles on the player while boosting. So we're going to write local function boost particles effect part. And by the way, part is the humanoid root part. We want to create particles, but if they already exist, we want to make sure that this function doesn't run. So we cannot spam this function. You see right now it's giving an error because the script is like, bro, this variable is nil. It doesn't exist. And that's pretty much why we're going to write boost particles equal instance.new, and we're going to make it a particle emitter. We're going to give it a name. We want its parent to be the humanoid root part. Humanoid root part is going to be the parent because we want the particles to follow the character while it's moving. You could create your own particle effects inside of a part and putting it inside of replicated storage, and then in the script you clone it and parent it to the humanoid root part. You could do that, or you can create the particles from scratch inside of the script, which is what I'll do. I do agree that creating the particles from scratch inside of the script is more long and more abstract than just directly doing it inside of a part, but that's just how I decided to do it, so don't judge me, okay? So first of all, we have the texture, which is what the particles will look like. Then we have the rate, which is how many particles appear per second. Then there's the size, the lifetime, the speed, the transparency, the color, if it's enabled, the amount of light it emits, the spread angle, the rotation speed. Of course, when the boost is done, we want to make the particles disappear, and this is pretty much the reason why we're going to create another function where we're going to remove the particles. We're going to write if boost particle, then boost particles dot destroy, and we're going to turn boost particles back to nil, so the script knows that there is no active boost particles anymore. So now we can close those two functions so we can see the other ones better. We're going to open up the fly function, and then down here we're going to get the character from the humanoid root part. So character equals hrp.parent. Then we find the humanoid. Since we already made a humanoid variable, we don't need to put local before. That's pretty much why I'm going to write it this way. Find first child of class humanoid. This line is basically saying find the first object whose class is exactly humanoid. If I were to use character dot find first child, which is a humanoid, it would also work, but it's more useful when you're searching for a base class that may have subclasses. I'm using find first child of class because I know I'm looking specifically for a humanoid object. We will need the humanoid because flying now affects the character rotation, animations, and movement state. As you can see in this example, when I'm trying to turn around, it's like kind of weird, as if like it's not really that smooth, and the game is like forcing my character to go in another way while I want to like spin, and that's all due because of auto rotate. So we're gonna fix this sort of bug or issue, whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna disable auto rotate. So humanoid dot auto rotate is gonna equal to false. This is because by default, Roblox tries to rotate the character automatically, but now we want the align orientation to control the character's direction. So we disable auto rotate to stop Roblox from fighting our custom rotation. Then as you can see here, another problem that we had in parts 1 flying system is that when we were flying and touching the ground at the same time, it's like we were running. It didn't look like we were flying, but as soon as we got off the ground, we got back into flying. This is all because of movement states. So when we fly, our state is in free fall, but then as soon as we touch the ground, our state becomes walking, and we want to sort of override this state. And this is pretty much why when the linear velocity and align orientation gets created, we will change the state of the humanoid to be into freefall. So humanoid change state is enum humanoid state type dot freefall. Freefall helps make the character behave like it is in the air instead of walking normally. One thing I forgot, that we really want to check that the humanoid exists before making those changes. So we're gonna make a condition. So if the humanoid exists, then change the auto rotation and change the state of the humanoid. And of course we want to add sound effects. So we're gonna go into toolbox and search for a sound effect when we activate the fly and when we use the boost. We're gonna go into audio and then I don't know, I'll just search for like Dragon Ball Z flying. That's good. We're gonna click on insert and put it inside of our script. Then I'll just get one for the boost. Alright, that's good. I'm just gonna rename boost sound effects and flying sound effect. Alright, so I'm gonna implement this inside of the script. So local fly sound effect is equal to script find first child flying SFX, and then if it exists, of course, then we make it play. So this checks if the flying sound exists inside of the script, and if it exists, then it plays it. So using find first child prevents error if the sound is missing. This checks if the flying sound exists inside of the script, and if it exists, it plays it. If you forgot, this function is really when we press F, it creates a line orientation, linear velocity, and an attachment, so our character flies. I'm telling you this so you can understand that this is the exact location where we will handle the animations. So reference the animator, then we want to check if the animator exists, then we're gonna get the track of the idle and the track of the moving animation. So this is not playing anything yet, it's just loading the animation inside of this variable. So instead of it being nil, these variables now represent animations. And here we're gonna write fly idle track play. The logic behind it is that as soon as we press F, this function is gonna go off. So it's gonna play the flying idle animation. So we first find the animator inside of the humanoid, then we load both flying animations, and when the flying starts, we immediately play the idle flying animation. The move animation will only play later when the player moves. This function doesn't handle movement. Okay, this is why we only play the idle animation in this function. We will play the movement animation somewhere else inside of the script. So I hope now you understand why at first we made those variables nil. Now go inside of the remove fly. So when the player presses F a second time to disable the fly, this function is going to play. In part 1, we destroyed the variables directly, so those variables. What I'm going to do is just change this sort of setup. I'm not really fixing a bug here. I just want it to be more clean. And that's why I'm gonna search inside of the humanoid root part for the exact object names. So I'm gonna create new variables. So local attachment 0 equal humanoid root part find first child fly attachment. This is called fly LV. So local LV equals HRP find first child fly LV, and here local align orientation is equal to HRP find first child fly AO. And then we will destroy each one. Here, each object is destroyed only if it exists, and after destroying it, we set the variable back to nil, so that tells the rest of the script that the flying is no longer active. We will also remove the animations when we disable the fly, so we're gonna write if fly idle track, then fly idle track stop. So it's gonna stop the animation, because if we do not stop the animations, the character could keep playing the flying animation after flying is turned off. So when the flying ends, we stop both animation tracks and reset the variables. Also, when the flying ends, we turn auto rotate back on. So that gives control back to Roblox normal character movement, and then we change the state to getting up, so the character exits the free fall behavior. Getting up is so the humanoid gets back up on their feet after falling down. So this is the state that the humanoid is supposed to be right after a free fall. Now you can close this function, you can close this function. We should be done with both of them. Now we're gonna go and handle the key of the boost. As I said earlier, I want the boost to be controlled by the key R. So if input.keycode equals enum.keycode.r, then of course if boost is already true, then return end. So that means if the boost is true, then stop the script. Of course, when we press R, boost turns from false into true, and this effect that we have here, we're gonna place it inside of replicated storage, and we're gonna reference it. So boost effect is equal to replicated storage, wait for child, of course, air, because I called it air, and we're gonna clone it. And then we're gonna parent it to the humanoid root part using the explode function, and we're gonna make the particles play. I'm just gonna change the name of this function. So start boost particles effect, so it represents more what this function is doing. Of course, we want the sound effects, so local boost sound effects is equal to script find first child boost sound effect, and if it exists, then we're gonna make it play. And after 3 seconds, we would want the boost to turn back to false. That's gonna make it so the boost stops, and when it stops, we want the particles to stop too. So stop boost particles. And as I said, we want this to happen after only 3 seconds. And that's why we're gonna use a task.delay. so the rest of the script can play at the same time too. So in summary, when the player presses R, the script starts to boost. The first condition will prevent spam. So if the player is already boosting, the script stops here. Then the fact that boost becomes true turns on the boost mode. We clone the air VFX from the replicate storage, and then we make this effect appear in game. We add the particles and we make the sound play. And after 3 seconds, the boost becomes false and the particles stop. If you remember in the beginning, I added more keys to control the flying system. So we're gonna add them here. So that's gonna be for the arrow keys. I also changed the name of the control button. So I'm gonna fix that here. And it's gonna be the same logic for input ended. Make sure the names that you put here match the ones in the table, or else it's not gonna work. Just be careful about that. Now go down into render stepped. In part 1, we wrote this logic to manage the speed of movement. But since we have a boost now, we gotta update it. So we're gonna write if boost, then it's kind of the same thing. Move2 is equal to move2.unit times boost speed, and else, so if there's no boost, meaning that the player didn't press R, or like the 3 seconds cooldown after the boost is over, go back to normal or stay normal and just have normal flying speed. This is where the boost actually affects the movement. So if the player is moving and boost is true, then the script uses boost speed. If the boost is false, it uses the normal flying speed. So just understand that pressing R is basically just changing the speed. Next step is going to be to control the direction the character is facing when they are flying. So below this line, we're going to write local horizontal velocity equals vector3.new final velocity.x 0 final velocity.z. We only use x and z because we want the horizontal direction. We ignore y because going up or down should not tilt the character. If horizontal velocity.magnitude is bigger than 0, then align orientation.cframe is equal to cframe.lookat vector3.0 horizontal velocity.unit, and align orientation.enabled equals true, and else align orientation.enabled equals false. So if the player is moving horizontally, align orientation turns the character toward that direction, and if the player is not moving horizontally, we disable align orientation. So think of it like this: align orientation wants a target rotation, and one way to give it that rotation is through a C-frame. So we're basically telling it face this direction. So what does C-frame.lookat do is that it creates a C-frame that looks from the position toward a target. So this is saying create a rotation that faces this direction. We're using vector3.0 because we don't care about the position, we only care about the rotation. So we just create a fake C-frame at the origin and tell it to face the movement direction. We're using horizontal velocity.unit because it represents the direction the player is moving horizontally, and we use it because aligned orientation only needs a direction to face. And this is exactly where the switch between the idle flying animation and the moving flying animation happens. So that's why we're gonna handle it here. So we're gonna write if fly idle track and fly move track exists, then if the magnitude of horizontal velocity is bigger than 1, then if the idle animation is playing, then we stop it, and if the moving flying animation is not playing, then make it play. If the horizontal velocity of the magnitude is not above 1, so else, then if the flying animation track is playing, then stop it, and if the fly idle animation is not playing, then play it. This is basically saying if the player has horizontal movement, the idle animation stops and the moving animation plays, alright? And if the player stops moving, then the moving animation stops and the flying animation starts to play again. The last and final thing we're gonna add is if humanoid, then humanoid change state enum.humanoid state type.freefall. This is gonna keep the character in the freefall state while the flying system is active, because Roblox can try to put the humanoid back into normal states. So while flying, we keep forcing freefall each frame. That's why we put this line inside of render stepped, so the character stays in the air behavior, so in the freefall state. This problem of switching the state of the humanoid to walking when the character touches the ground is not going to be an issue anymore. After we did all of this, I hope you understood each and every single adjustment and addition we did inside of the script. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments. Now we will play the game, see how it goes. Alright, so here it looks like the animation works, the sound effect works. This is saying control is not a valid member of enum.keycode. So here's a mistake here. So I'm just changing back to left control. Oh yeah, that's true. It's not a valid member of keycode. Down. Alright, so left control. Alright, bet. I'm gonna just fix that everywhere I wrote left control, just real quick. I'm gonna fix that in the table 2 and in the input ended 2. Now I'm gonna test again to see if it works. Yeah. So when I go down it works. I press space, it goes up. When I press R, the boost works. Everything was working perfectly. The only thing I noticed is that when I turn on the boost system, the VFX is not aligning properly with the character. So it's facing upwards, as you can see here when I press R. It's an easy fix. Only thing I will do is just rotate it. All I'll do is just like multiply. And by the way, if you want to change the orientation of a C-frame, you gotta multiply it by C-frame.angles. And I'll try rotating it on the x-axis. I'll write math.rad. So it's gonna be in radians, 90 degrees. And then you put 0 on the other axis. Then I'll test, see how it goes. It has to be minus 90. It's not really the orientation I wanted. Now everything should be fine. Sweet, so everything is working perfectly. So yeah, that's the flying system. If you guys want me to make a part 3 where I add more features, you can let me know in the comments. I hope in this video that you learned something new and that everything was clear. That was it for me today. See you guys in another video. Take care. Bye.